All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the seventh episode of RK Leadership, where we help develop tomorrow's leaders with providing them with knowledge, experience, and inspirational stories. And today, my special guest is Robert DeMarco from Halifax. So, a little background about Rob and how we became friends. So, Rob and I actually went to the same university. We attended the same university back in 2000, Rob.
Yeah.
I guess that's when we started. We graduated 2004. I will let Rob kind of introduce himself. But again, we hadn't spoken in a while. It's been a while since we actually caught up. So we did catch up last week, and Rob has some amazing stories that I would like him to share with the audience. And what we decided to do is actually not even do one podcast. We're going to make a series of podcasts because I think there won't be enough time to fit it all into the 1 hour. So without any further ado, thank you, Rob, again for providing your time today. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of walk us through your journey in terms of how you got here, but don't get into too much details because we're going to leave that for our real the meat and potatoes of the conversation.
Listen, Rob. First off, thanks for having me. This is great to be here. I'm excited. Following our last conversation last week, that was intense, and I wasn't really expecting that, right? So, I think we're very like-minded people. I feel like I think we're onto something, and you're right. I think we need to share it. We need to communicate, tell our everyday story, and then just let everybody kind of take from it what they take, and hopefully if it helps just one person or if it makes a difference, well, then so be it, and that's wonderful, right? A little bit about me. I mean, you're right. So we did university 2000 to 2004. We graduated. I mean, I haven't seen you since then. I mean, you went your way, I went mine. We've got a ton of mutual friends who are all, highly successful. They're doing great in their professional lives and their family lives. And, I only really get snippets from everyone, but I mean, we're all still loosely connected, so it's really nice to see that everyone's doing well and it's all kind of, everything's moving forward. For me, my story was I left university. I joined the Navy. I moved to Halifax. I started doing all my Navy training. That led me to be on the East Coast, the West Coast. I lived in England for 5 months. I sailed the world. I mean, I've got a ton of great adventurous stories of things that the Navy gave to me. Throughout that adventure, I mean, I got married. I had 4 kids. My kids are, I'd say, all grown up. They're 7, 9, 11, and 13 years old. So midway grown up.
Nice.
And but up till this day today, I can honestly tell you that I went from being a workaholic, and I suffered burnout, severe burnout, rock bottom, to the point where you really lose yourself, you lose your material thing, you lose all the things that are meaningful to you, and you question everything. And then today, I would say I'm definitely not a workaholic anymore. I loosely use the term I'm a grown up hippie, but that's like that. That's just because I've changed my ways and I'm at a point where I've found happiness in my everyday, and my decisions are guided now less by what I've been told to strive for and more I follow what I've got inside me in terms of how do I feel, what I really believe the answer to each of us is something that's inside us.
That's right.
And you have to really listen. You have to listen really hard. You have to know yourself. That takes time. It takes forever to start to understand, well, what is it that I really like? What don't I like? What are the things that I want? and we're all, and the beautiful thing is that we're all different. So what works for me is not going to work for somebody else. But the thing is that's common with us all, is that we have to listen to what's inside us. And I think when you can get in touch with that, you know, you're going to be closer to being happy. And of course, my journey, I became very successful. I mean, I had, the house and the couple cars and the family and the vacations and even in my career, I mean, I was, I guess, climbing that ladder, and, I was, getting my bilingual, getting my MBA, doing, you're ticking off all the boxes, you're getting the life experience and you're looking at your career and it's all opening up in front of you. But as it's opening up in front of you, I was sitting there and there was this moment where I was at my old house in my laundry room and my wife at the time had come down the stairs. And I remember looking at her and saying, I am not happy in life. I have everything and I'm not happy. And that was such a startling point in my, because everything that I've been working towards and I had it, and it was the opposite feeling. And that was, that was the start of the end,
That's right.
But the good thing is that when I say the start of the end, it was really the start of my discovery, because I was miserable and I had to start figuring out, well, why aren't I happy? And start asking myself some tough questions and start reading some books and start making some changes in my life. And every little thing that I did, it was like an experiment. If I'm going to do this, did this make me feel better or worse? And, what I didn't have before was I didn't have time, because I gave all my time to work. I gave all my time to everybody else but me. And what was left for me was I was just a shell. And then, so I found there was a crusade to almost slowly start taking back all the parts of me that had been given out. And, I can't remember which book it was that I was reading it, but, there was this definition of selfish. Now, I used to always think that selfish was putting myself first. And I would feel bad if I ever put myself first. I'm like, oh no, I'm being selfish again. But I read this quote, and it said something along the lines of, it's not selfish to put yourself first, but it is selfish if you expect other people to put you first. That's where you start becoming really selfish, and then I started realizing, like, wait a minute, like, what expectations do I put on other people? And maybe I need to cut back on the expectations I'm putting on other people, and also give myself a little bit of space to say, it's okay to put myself first. I am feeling a little tired. I'm going to take a little bit of time for me. I don't feel like going across town to go do this thing today. I'm going to take a little bit of time for me. And old me used to beat myself up because it was a perfectionist. It was always this thing of, I got to be the best. I got to be first. I gotta win. And you do it at the cost of yourself. You drive your body to, you drive your body hard. You drive your mind hard. You're not getting sleep. You're not breathing well. You're not eating well. And all those are all things that, none of them are making you better. And in fact, when you wake up one day and you're overweight and you're laying in bed and you feel like garbage and you don't want to see anybody and you're depressed, you could say, oh, but I live in this beautiful house. But you feel like garbage. You feel like shit, right?
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that people equate success to those materialistic items versus actually, being internally happy with yourself and with your life and what you have in life that's not that materialistic stuff, and knowing who you are. So, you touch upon a lot of great stuff, Robin. I want to dissect each part of it so we can share that with people. Let's go back to the piece where you said you weren't happy. What did happiness mean to you back in that time, and what does happiness mean to you now?
So the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is I was operating at a level of being stressed all the time. I woke up stressed. I would be eating my food stressed. I'd be like throwing food down my mouth. I'd be running from one thing to the next. And the thing is that that's not like, I think, as we all know, stress is, that fight or flight, and it's supposed to be just a very short duration, that thing that's supposed to save you. But that's not supposed to be your status quo. It's not supposed to be your whole day. And so the thing is that when I think back to that older time, I mean, I was on level 10 of being stressed out, to the point that I would go to sleep at night. I would come home and I was depressed, and I would go to sleep like right after supper, maybe about like say 8:30, and I'm in bed and I fall sour to sleep and I'm out until the next morning. But only to find out that although I was out to the world, I was dead laying there. I wasn't even getting quality sleep because my mind was so stressed. My body was so stressed out that it was thinking about work, it was thinking about family, it was thinking about projects. It was trying to optimize all the things going on in my life that my brain couldn't shut off. And of course, it just made my next day that much worse. I wasn't getting recharged. It was actually like an Apple iPhone where the battery starts up at 100. So the most it could ever charge to was 83%, and now you're down to like 68%, and it was a losing battle, right?
So what does that translate to now? What does happiness mean to you now in this point of time of your life?
So now I would say there was a trade-off from back then. I had quantity. Today I have quality. Okay. So back then I was multitasking. I was trying to do as much as I could at the same time. So I'm going to talk to my son, and I'm going to cook supper, and I'm going to write this email, and I'm going to be like looking out the window and seeing what's going on with the traffic. And I'm going to do all this sensory stuff. And my mind was, and I was patted on the back. I was like, you're wonderful because you could do it all. You do all these things. And of course I was doing none of it really well. I was completely screwing up what my son was saying to me. The food was probably, average at best. Just everything was falling off. And what's different today is when I say quality is the fact that I really try not to do anything at the same time. Like right now, I'm just talking to you. I'm not trying to get stuck in my head. When you're talking, I'm trying to listen to what you're saying. If I'm going to drink my coffee, I'm going to try to enjoy the coffee as I'm having it.
Living in the present.
Really slowing it down and valuing my time.
Yeah.
I used to give my time away like it was a sale. Like, here, take it. Please, everybody, just take part of me. Like it was, I didn't value my time. I just felt it was just unlimited. And not that I didn't value myself, but I find now, like, I protect my time. I mean, I'm still a good person. I still help people. I still do stuff. But I look at everything and I'm just more aware of my time, and none of it stolen from me. It's given out.
Yeah.
On my permission,
And it's funny you say that, Rob. Living in a big city where you see people in this rat race, and they've got the nice houses, they've got the nice cars. They're rushing to work every single day, being stuck in that traffic. So you're miserable actually going into work because you're so stressed out sitting in that traffic. Then you add that stress during work because, your boss does something or your colleague says something or something doesn't go right. You lose a client, etc. And then you're rushing back home again. When do you really stop and enjoy yourself? And when are you really happy within that day? Because even like you said, going back to the eating part, when you're shoving that food down your mouth, you don't even really get to taste the food. You're just shoving stuff down your mouth because you're required to have that food as a survival mechanism. It's not an enjoyment mechanism, right?
Yeah. And it's just because it popped in my head. I remember, when I was the busiest and the most successful and everything, the seasons would change. It would be like, oh, okay, spring, okay, fall, okay, winter's here, okay, boom, like, and we're just going through the cycle, um, through this transformation. And so this transformation for me is, I got to say, it's 7 years. It was 7 years ago. I had my burnout, my divorce, I guess the whole restart to life. And, I didn't get better in 2 days or a month. It was marginal at best. It was just over time, just slightly, I gained an extra 5% here, 5% there every year. And it's now over the duration of 7 years. It's really noticeable. I could say, oh, wow, I'm not that person anymore. I, when I'm sitting on the stoop in front of my house and I'm looking at the tree and I'm looking at the leaves, every single day you're watching it bud, and then the leaf is out and then the flower is out, and you go through I've never had the time before to really slow down and notice the seasons as I do today, because I make that a priority. Whereas before I was trying to do everything, especially when you're trying to do 5 or 6 things at the same time. Yeah. All these other things drop up, everything drops off. And then next thing you know, you're not doing anything well. And I think that's where your fulfillment comes from, is when you can enjoy the simple things in the moment.
Do you think, Rob, that a part of that is not only the expectations that we put on ourselves, but the expectation that society puts on us to be a certain way, have certain things in life, and live a certain life?
So, I think we touched on it last time we were talked. I believe a lot of our expectations comes from what we see on TV or say social media. We're social animals, but we learn by seeing. And so what do we see on TV? What was the TV show in the 80s, then the 90s, and then 2000s? And you start to watch how the TV shows have changed. But every single TV show sets the expectation of something that society needs to strive towards, right?
That's right.
Like, take a look, Leave It to Beaver. Look at the size of the house in Leave It to Beaver, and then look at the size of the house in Modern Family. It's night and day, right? So all of a sudden now the expectation, so that's your subconscious is saying, oh, I need to have this big, massive house, and I need to have this stainless steel fridge, and of course I have to have this natural gas cooktop, and on and so forth. And what car are they driving? And then what activities are they doing? And, that starts to set the stage of what normal is. But the thing is that it's very freeing when you can see that and you can make that choice to turn the TV off, to unplug from all the people who are on. I get this is going to be on social media because it's a message we're trying to get out. We all have control over the content that we want to digest. It's the same thing. You can choose to go and get Burger King and slam it down your throat, or you can go to a health food store, get some really good quality ingredients, make a great food, great meal, and sit down and enjoy it with your family. The choice is yours. So, if I'm slamming social media and what the expectations are, I'm not slamming the show. I'm just saying people have to do a better job of being aware of what content are they taking in to themselves. Just like be conscious of your smoking or your alcohol intake or your food intake, how you breathe. It all counts. It all counts.
That's right. Absolutely. I want to take you back to the point where you said you had to ask yourself some tough questions in order to make these changes.
Yeah.
What kind of questions would you ask yourself, and what was your thought process like?
So I'll give you an example. Post divorce, I dated a couple of people, and I was in this one relationship, and great person, fantastic person. Okay, but I'm in this relationship, and when you talk about the tough questions you ask yourself, is there's that moment where you say, am I happy? How do I feel? Is this where I want to be? Is this what I want to be doing? And it's not your thinking mind, at least this is how I see the world anyway. It's not your thinking mind that says, oh yeah, no, this is great. Because my thinking mind would have said that everything is perfect. But it's how I felt in my guts, in my body, in my heart. There was something inside me that was tense, that was saying, this is not where you're supposed to be. And this being not where I'm supposed to be had no reflection on the other person. You know, it was just me knowing that I was out of misalignment, you know? And so you know, me being a people pleaser, or I was a significant people pleaser, it was very hard for me to put myself first and to speak up and to say, oh, I don't know where I need to be or who I need to be with, but I just know this isn't the person. And then you're having that honest conversation with yourself, and then you have to have it with that other person. And that was death for me, because, you know, that's never easy to have. And then so there was a lot of, you know, around that time too, like I'm saying to myself, oh, okay, well, I'm weighing 220. I feel like garbage. I don't want to feel like garbage. Okay, so I need to do something. And I think a lot of the time the answers are always inside you. You just have to listen to how you feel. And then when you see what that answer is, then it's actually act and do something about it.
That's right.
So the power to get out of that relationship that you're not meant to be in. The power to exercise when you say, I need to be in better shape. You know, if you go for therapy and your therapist gives you some advice, it's not letting it fall on deaf ears. The hardest part is the action. You know, it's not finding what you need to do. It's getting the strength to follow through and do it, you know, and I found the more I slowed down, the more time I had to listen to myself, the more I had a better understanding of where I was in misalignment. And then when I would be able to pinpoint and say, wait a minute, you know, my social schedule is keeping me way too busy and I don't like it. Or my phone, the notifications are going off way too much and it's stressing me out. Or when my kids would come home and they want my attention and I can't be 100% available to them. There's all, you know, and also now I'm frustrated and, you know, the rest of my day is kind of going off on a not so great, direction. I find in those moments, it's stopping and looking at each one of them and saying, what can I do different? Okay. And when you say, well, I'm going to pull my phone out and I'm going to change how notifications pop up on my phone. So now there's no more buzzing. There's no more red light. In fact, I'm going to take this phone and I'm going to go and put it in a drawer for 4 hours and I'm not responding to it. You know, if your social calendar is so busy, look, it's not because you're mad at anybody, but there's only so much time you have to give out. And you have to start saying quality over quantity. So I'm going to pick my one friend or my two friends or my three friends, and I'm going to see these guys on or these people on the regular, but I might not be able to maintain 15. And it's what feels right to you, not what's right from other people, because other people are going to be pissed off because of the changes you're making.
That's right.
You know, and this touches on a whole other topic that I don't really want to dive into right now, but you know, it is deriving happiness is self-derived. It's, I'm proud of myself, not the social acceptance that I'm getting from other people by liking my pictures or by telling me, hey, Rob, you're doing a great job. You know, I found that I was a slave to all this praise and it was that I needed it. And then what I realized was I was like, okay, well, I can't live my life like this. You know, I need to spend more time having conversations with myself, patting myself on the back and saying, you're enough, you're good. You know, yes, you're a good person. You're good with your hands, so on and so forth. And reducing my reliance on external validation.
Yes.
And, you know, it's freeing, you know, and I really have to hit on this point. It sucks because my social calendar was too busy and I had to back away from a lot of people, but it had nothing to do with me being mad at anyone or they weren't good people, or it was the same thing with me breaking up with that girlfriend. it had nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with me living my truth and me getting back into alignment. And the thing is that I'm living this life for me. I'm not living for everybody else. And so you have to make those hard choices, those discussions. And then when you do, all of a sudden you start to say, wow, I've got a lot more time on my hands. I'm happier. I feel like the things that I'm doing are shining 20% more brighter. And it's because you're not exhausted. You're not overextended. And
That's right.
and I think that's part of the happiness that I feel today that I couldn't feel 7 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point that I wanted to talk about is that the validation in today's day and age where people require from these social media sites and platforms, and especially the younger folks where they open these accounts and they're posting all these random pictures of themselves in the selfies, and in order for them to gain that dopamine hit, they require the likes and the comments and etc. And actually, I think there's a lot of negative aspect that comes with it. With the if you can't handle that negative comment that somebody says about you, then it kind of wipes everything else away because you're so focused on that. And this is why I wanted to share these kind of stories with especially like young folks, that you don't need to you don't require these validations from other people. Try to seek that validation from yourself. That's the most important thing. And from the people that actually unconditionally love you, not temporary. A lot of your friends will be temporary friends. When you get into a certain stage of your life, they'll no longer be there. The true meaning of friendship and family and love is something that's unconditional. So there's no conditions attached to it. So if you lose your job or you lose your money, that love will still exist no matter what of the external influences or the changes. And that's a problem where people become so insecure within themselves, and this negative self-talk and the limited beliefs in themselves, and their only source of happiness becomes external.
Yeah.
Right. And it's great that, you talked about that transformation within yourself. And, that's something I had to go through myself to be able to learn and become self-aware and get rid of the fear of criticism and all that other negative BS. So walk me through, when you realize you need this transformation, or, when you come upon it, what kind of steps did you take to initiate it? And what really pushed you through, you talked about, I guess, what pushed you through the edge, but what were the first steps you needed to take in order to start that?
So I'll be honest with you. The first thing that I did, so I was in a bad place. Like I just come back from a deployment, and I was significantly burnt out, and I was too proud to say I couldn't cut it. So my workday would go from, say, 12 hours to 15 hours to 18 hours. And I really got myself to a bad spot mentally. I mean, I was suicidal, and I was just rock bottom. So in terms of what did I do, the only thing that I did at that point was I had the strength to go to the military hospital and ask for help. And I say it's the only thing. It was the biggest thing I did in my life, because everything inside me was saying, you're a failure. You're giving in. You're weak. I was fighting myself. And you have to remember too, whatever bullies are out in this world, there's no bigger, fatter, meaner, goddamn jerk of a fucking bully than we are with ourselves. Right?
100%.
And so in terms of what did I do, I went there. And when I went for help, that triggered off this whole combo of things. I met this great doctor. And then there was, I didn't want medication, but it was very clear. It was like, listen, you're in a really bad spot, and this medication might not be forever, but you need some medication right now for the short term. And when you start seeing your life completely dissolve in front of you, you're willing to grasp at anything to say, help me and fix me. So, I'm seeing the doctor, I'm taking the medication, I start seeing a therapist. A plan is put in place. The thing that helped me was the fact that I had a doctor who cared about me, and I had a therapist who took me in and saw something that I couldn't see. And it was through her guidance. It was through her support, through her investment in me. It was through her that I was able to start my journey, because she was opening my eyes. She was telling me a story. She was talking to me about all these things that I had no clue about, And so I guess it started with me asking for help. And then when the help arrived, it was not fighting the advice that was coming towards me, accepting it, listening to it, and over time, allowing everything to kind of unfold. And eventually, I started actually healing. I started getting better, But when I arrived there, I was a workaholic, and I was too proud, and my ego was not going to let anybody in.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hard conversations with my therapist where she mentally had to punch me in the face and say, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. You are not well, and eventually we talked about this a lot on our last talk, is that I had to surrender. I had to surrender my beliefs. I had to surrender my identity. I had to surrender my situation. I just had to give in. I had to say, whatever I've been doing is not working. And
That's right.
I need to try something else. It wasn't, when you hear about people smoking and everyone's telling me, oh, you should quit smoking. That person doesn't quit smoking until they want to quit smoking, And so when I was going through this, it wasn't until I broke that I realized I had to change, that whatever I was doing wasn't working anymore. And that was the pivotal moment where everything, all the doors started to open up and change started to happen. It's when I allowed change to start to happen. It's when I said, I can no longer go down this path because it's hurting me and I'm not happy. And of course I'm getting weaker and I'm breaking down as a result of it.
That's right. And just sticking with your therapist, one thing you shared with me last week was that one piece of that situation. Are you okay to share that with people?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to share that. It was a very
very powerful.
It was, I've got a wonderful therapist who it's just her personality, my personality. It goes, maybe her bluntness might not work with other people, but for me, it's a slap in the head that I needed. I needed then, and I continue to see her every 2 weeks. In fact, I'll see her tomorrow. It's that slap in the head that I need every now and then, because my ego likes to pop out and say, I'm fixed now, everything's good, and then she'll continually remind me to say, no, you're on a path and you're not at the finish line. Don't get ahead of yourself, because our egos love to get ahead of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So, but at that time, one of the strongest things that had happened was she had said to me a very simple question: was you just what's your priority? And I had blurted out as fast as I could. I said my priority is my family. That's it's always been family. Family's number one. We've been saying it since we were kids. And she looked at me and I don't know if she just expected that I was going to say that. I don't know if this was all set up, because of course I fell for the trap and I said, family's number one. And then she got really, really mad at me. And there was this little bit of a confrontation where she just kind of said, listen here, you can lie to yourself but don't lie to me because you're wasting my time. And what we're doing here is trying to make you get better. And if you're not going to be truthful here, then we're just, just go see somebody else. And of course, I got defensive and I took complete offense to this. And she's like, okay, well, she's like, for example, she's like, carry on. She's like, tell me about your last week. She's like, let's go from the second you woke up and we'll go moment by moment and we'll go through the whole day. And then I started explaining. I'm like, this is what my day is. I would wake up and, I'm going to drop the kids off at daycare. I'm going to be at the office for 6:45. I'm going to have my coffee. I'm going to be briefing my boss. I'll be going through this, blah, blah, blah. And then throughout the whole day, and it's like, okay, now it's 4:45. Okay, I'm leaving the office and I'm going to go and pick up the kids from daycare. I'm going to go home and cook food. Okay, I'm on my BlackBerry. I've got this meeting. I got to go talk to this person. The ship broke down over here. And we did that, for the span, I think it was like a week and a half. We, going through all the days. And even when we're talking about Saturday and Sunday, it's, okay, well, on Saturday, we had this Portuguese ship that was in town and okay, there was this issue. So then I'm having to deal with, I got to go into the ship. I got to go deal with this. And sarcastic therapist says to me, yeah, it sounds like your family is number one, and it was like the biggest punch in the gut because it hurt so much because it was that small little thing that I needed to realize. And when I say realize, I heard her that day. It didn't really mean anything to me or really sink in until 7 months later, because my ego was protecting that truth and that hurt so much that even though I heard it, I wouldn't really allow that truth to sink in. Okay. And of course, that moment has become ever so powerful that I repeat it all the time. And it means so much more to me today than it did back then. Okay. But that was a very strong moment, was because I didn't want to say that something was more important than my family. But when you looked at my actions,
yeah,
my family was like number 5, number 6, because I was doing, I've got to progress my career. So I've got to do my MBA. Okay. I've got to learn French. Okay. So I'm going to be doing my French training. Oh, I got to keep up my social contacts because, God forbid, something fall through the crack. And so you're firing on all cylinders and you're doing A, B, C, and D, and you're maintaining, and then you're maintaining your family, but you're not being the best father that you can be. You're getting by. And then there's that one moment where you have to say, wait a minute, you get one shot at this. Your kids are little for just a very small window in time. Is this the father that you want to give them? And it's only when you can look at the question like that you start to say, what are you willing to trade in to be a better dad? So maybe, maybe I'm not going to be the best employee. Maybe I'm not going to progress anymore. Maybe I'm going to have a smaller house. Maybe I'm going to have less friends. Maybe I'm going to have a whole lot less of everything. But if family's number one, then I'm going to make family number one and I'm going to be the best goddamn father I can be. And you have to be willing to trade everything in to do that if you say family is number one.
That's right. No, and that's, I really appreciate you for sharing that because, again, I think that's very powerful and a lot of people can relate to that. Again, as I said, we live in a society where it's work, go, especially in North America. I know in Europe, things are a little bit different than they are here. And people tend to just, inside they're thinking, just like what you said, family's number one. That's why I'm going to work every day. That's what I'm working 12 hours, 20 hours, putting in all this overtime to make this money and get taxed to death. But in reality is you're sacrificing that small difference in that salary with doing in all this overtime and really sacrificing that with quality time with your kids, with your spouse, as a unit. And this is why we see, divorce rates going through the roof. People can't, maintain that oneness, that wholeness with a family is because of lack of quality. So people can blame it on finance and, all this other stuff, but it really comes down to, personal values and, the the effort that you're putting into that relationship, whether with your, like I said, your spouse or kids or family unit. And I think we really miss that. And looking at, you know, looking at the past or history, things have changed quite a bit. Everything has evolved. Everything is so fast paced now with all this technology. And again, people wanting to keep up with the Joneses and having that kind of lifestyle. Look, sometimes you got to decide what that priority is. If you want to go out, start a family and do that, then make sure that, your family is priority. Or else, if you want to gain that financial freedom and create that wealth for yourself, do that first before you start a family, because you cannot do multiple things at the same. It doesn't work. You just don't have enough time in the day to spread yourself thin. And like you said, it's not just, it's not just the work. It's the family. It's the social aspect. It's, putting in time for yourself and putting the effort to, keep up. There's so much going on at one time that, you just get lost in it, and time just flies. When you blink of an eye and you're 60 years old tomorrow and your kids are all growing up out of the house.
Yeah.
What did you really gain? Like, what quality time did you spend with them? And I say this from, personal experience of my own father, like being that workaholic. And, I was just talking to my client today about this. He worked, all the time. My dad worked all the time. We would see him like late at night, come home to pass out. And when you're a kid, and, I remember playing hockey back in the day, and you're looking in the arena and everyone's parents are there, and your parents are not there, especially your father figure. That does a lot of damage to you internally, right?
Yeah.
And when you grow up with it, you create that resentment. And you build that insecurity, and there's a lot of stuff that comes with it. And it takes a lot of work to get that out of you.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to say what you said in terms of priority and family. It's vital.
It's funny. There's a couple of things you said that I just want to jump on. I mean, first off, we talked lightly about it last time. Was, the fact is that our parents were, result of their generation, of their time, of their environment. They were the way they were because that's the way the times were. And you're right. I mean, I had a lot of resentment when I was in my 20s and 30s. I mean, even up to not that long ago, to be honest, there was a lot of anger, hurt, stuff that I was holding on to, and eventually, I've just recently arrived to this point where, there's this love and there's this forgiveness, there's this understanding of realizing that sometimes that other generation was just only responding to the world how they knew it.
Exactly.
And they might not have been able to meet up to my expectations, but that's okay. And again, that's that selfish thing. It's what expectation am I putting on other people? And like my father just recently passed, and yours had passed not that long ago. And, there's a lot to be said about forgiveness and not holding on to that resentment, and coming to terms with the fact that they might not have lived a way that we wanted them to live, but they were doing the best they could with what they knew, with the intentions, The other thing you'd said, talking about family is that you're right. Like, there's a lot of things you should probably do before you start having a family. You want to get ahead, you want to travel, you want to do all these different things. What happens is when you start your family, you've got this one small window to kind of get it right. And if you lose your footing, it's a slippery slope, and you can lose it like that. And I lost my family, and no, I don't think anybody starts off on day one when they get married and they say, I do, and they get excited because they're going to start this beautiful adventure. And you're talking about kids and all the things you're going to do. And, and it's not like you can only travel before kids. I mean, I traveled with my kids.
That's right.
But the thing is that you know, be very careful with how many things you juggle, because if you drop your family, oh man, there's no do-overs. It's gone, you know? And I don't think people understand the gravity of what it is, or how serious it is. I mean, my situation is, my ex and I, we live in Nova Scotia, in Halifax. So I didn't have any family here. She didn't have any family here. So, we had our fourth child, and then I burnt out and I got really, really sick. And then we were both too proud to ask for help. And it was just really hard times, and the thing is that we kept on thinking that, well, we can get through this, we'll just pull through this, until we couldn't. And until, I think, patience turned to resentment, and all of a sudden now you're more roommates than you are a family. And then, you start going down that path where all of a sudden there's no more glue that's holding you together. And it's just a matter of time until you start going your own way. And, you and I talk about how we feel about say our parents not being in the stands. Well, I try to empathize with my kids, how they feel going between two houses every week.
That's right.
Like I can't even imagine the bullshit that's causing them, and they never asked for this, and so I have my own regrets that, I wish I could go back in time and I could have dropped off a whole bunch of these sandbags of shit that I was carrying, that I was prioritizing, and been more available. I wish I downsized. I wish I cared less about money in my career and all these fucking things I was focused on, and really made sure that family was my number one, and made sure that glue never pulled apart.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very strong message that has to be shared outwards to everybody, is that, there's no greater thing in this world than family, and unfortunately, when you're turning on TV today and you're turning on to the social media, it's a different message that's being told today. Before I talk about that message, I'll just talk about what the message was when you and I were coming up, and you tell me if your experience was different. But for me, it was like being in high school and someone said, well, make sure you get yourself ready to get into university.
Yeah.
And when you get to university, you get after that, you're setting yourself up to get a good job. And then you go get yourself a good job, but then you'll take a job that's going to make sure that you're going to be successful. And you'll do that job at all costs, even if it means that you're going to fucking move far away from your family. You're going to take that job, and it's going to, but now you're going to have a wonderful career, but you just moved away from your family. And that was the biggest mistake, was no one ever said, family is number one, stay close to your tribe, stay close to your community, stay close to all of your relatives. There was something that said it was more important to have a job and a career than even being close to your family. And it was a trade-off that we willingly gave,
Right. Yep.
And so that was our story. I think us coming up, today's story is very much, you're locked into social media, and you could have, you're at a restaurant and 5 people are sitting there and they're all on their phones, and they think that, well, I'm with my family. Well, no, you're not really with your family. You're not even connected, And so I think the common theme of what's going on here is the fact that from wherever we were in the 60s and the 70s, is that we've moved away from family and we've become isolated. We've become successful, isolated people living in our own little homes, all divorced, with, brilliant job titles, and everyone is miserable. And, ordering food that's being delivered to your house because of the convenience. And it's like, no, this isn't what wonderfulness is. Wonderfulness is when you're sitting around a table with your family and there's a home cooked meal and everyone's connected, everyone's talking, and there's laughter, and everyone's listening to what everyone's saying.
That's right.
But that's gone. And the hard part is that if you don't make that an example, your kids will never know what that is.
That's right.
So it's on you, it's on me to change our ways and to say, for example, all the electronics, go put it on the table over there.
Yeah.
we're going to be present here. We're all sitting down. We're all not getting up from the table. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to enjoy this. We're going to laugh. And we're going to do this every goddamn day because this is important.
No, absolutely. Just think about how many families actually eat dinner together, or on the weekend have breakfast together, or have lunch or dinner it's always go, go, go. You know, you're going to put your kids into 50 different sports or activities, just because you wanted to be a baseball or a hockey player. Now you're forcing that onto your kids, even though they might not like it. You're putting all this pressure on your kids, but it all comes down to how much quality time are you spending. And I know, your culture being Italian and, my own culture being Persian. I remember from like the back in the days when we were kids, and I've been in the, in the Italian world as well, where when they have a get together, holy, like, the 5 meals that you guys have, the 5 different meals that you guys have for lunch. And it's so, and the amount of people that's in that house, and the warmness, and just like you said, the joy and the laughter and the loudness, because it was a one family unit. And then, you had the aunts, the uncles, the friends. That doesn't happen anymore. Like when I get to see my daughter, and the most she'll be around is like myself, my mom, and her, like the 3 of us.
Right.
She never gets to experience that full house with everybody there, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's what family is about.
Yeah.
And we don't even make an effort to create that for them because, like you said, the divorce being part of it, being away from the actual family is a part of it. So how do you bring that cohesiveness again together in this day and age?
I'll tell you, there's something I do now that I didn't do before, and it's just a small little thing of I make myself available. So I wake up really, really early when I've got my kids. I wake up really early. I'll get myself ready, and then I'll go and wake up, and their day starts off with me kind of getting in bed, giving them a nice hug, a good cuddle, a dedicated, especially with 4 kids, it's like a dedicated wake up to each child that they start their day. They go have their meals, we get all prepped and, pack their school bags or whatnot, and then they go off. And then my day kind of happens. But before they come home, I'll go and sit in the front of my house for half an hour. And I'll just sit there in silence. I'll be calm and cool. So when they get off their bus, I'm ready for them, right? And I can't help but think there's something to be said about the quality of being there. They can feel your energy, right?
Yeah.
And then when they come home and they're telling their stories and they're talking to you, I'm not trying to do 3 other things. And I can't help but think that that's that quantity versus quality thing, and quality is everything, especially when it comes to your kids and your family. Recently my brother just had sold his house out of Brampton, and he moved out to Halifax. And my aunt just sold a house in Toronto, and she's coming out this way. And my grandmother might be doing the same. And there's something to be said about what would you trade from your life today to be able to have family close by? And family is everything.
Absolutely.
And it's everything for you, but it's also everything for your kids. I mean, I remember spending so much time with my grandparents. I mean, and they had a huge help in shaping the person that I've become. Those memories were invaluable, and it's important to give that to our kids. When you talk about your daughter and the experience she's getting, it's the same thing that what I want to give to my kids. I want to give them more family than I want to give them material objects, because I know, and I think, as you know, any material object you give them, they will get bored of it within time.
That's right.
But if you go do an activity, if you go do something that's like, like I'll take my kids to the beach, and they'll complain all the way till we get to that beach. But once we get to that beach, they're playing in the sand, they're in the ocean, they're having a wonderful time. And then I got to drag them to bring them back home. And then they'll be talking about, for the rest of the week, be talking about the time that we went to the beach, and I just feel that it's surrounding your kids with family and doing activities and just finding happiness and doing that. It's not buying them a $300 sweater to say, not, look what I got you. Because they don't, that the sweaters are eventually going to get worn out and it's going to disappear. It's going to get wrecked. And then, and I've caught myself doing that a couple times where I try to give my kids this great lifestyle, and then, a floor gets marked or a wall gets dinged, and then you're losing your shit because you're like, oh, look at this beautiful thing that you have. And it's like, well, what's more important right now? Scolding your kid, and having this pristine castle, or, having a quality activity, quality moments with your kids, and really kind of bringing them to become the people that they need to become. And what examples are you showing them?
That's right. And that's exactly, that's so important, leading by example. So, we tell our kids not to be on their iPad or phones. And, I'm guilty of this, especially now that a lot of my work is on, on my phone. I'll sit beside her and, want to spend quality time with her, but I catch myself, being on my phone, and she calls me out on it.
Yeah.
And I like that because, she keeps me accountable for my actions, because when I tell her, when we're at dinner, breakfast, or any meal that we have together, no phones, no iPads. And I know you and I talked about this last time. I try to take my daughter out on dates, from, back when she was 5 years old. Now she's 6. And one thing I try to teach her is when we're sitting across the table together, and, you touched on this point, we don't, like, my phone's away, and, no iPad for you, or you can't watch like your shows and all that crap, because I want to try to teach her how to learn how to converse with one another and share, communicate and learn how to communicate with one another, versus I'm on my phone, you're on your iPad, we're eating. We don't even know what we're eating. We're so consumed in this effing device. And second, we don't even communicate. And I see that people going on dates. I see that when, like you said, families. I just smile, honestly, when I go to restaurants and I look at people that are on together as a couple, and they're each on their phone. I'm like, how the fuck are you going to make this relationship last when you're not even paying attention to each other? And this is like for the majority of the date, or, when they're together, it's not just, okay, 2 seconds, I'm checking something. And I think it's very disrespectful in a lot of ways. And we're trying to, what we're telling society is it's okay to do that. We're teaching society that it's okay.
So I got to tell you something. It's been this nugget that's kind of fallen into me this week, and it's something that's really resonating with me. And and I think this is a part of the discussion of what we're going to have right now, is that most people, I don't think, are able to sit still. They're not able to be bored. There is a need today, more than ever before, to always be doing something. A TV's got to be on.
Yeah.
I got to be checking my phone. If I'm not checking my stocks, if I'm not checking Instagram, if I'm not checking, my audiobook, then I need to be smoking, or I'm going to go smoke a joint, or I'm going to have a beer, or I got to get water. I got to be eating. I got to be doing something. And there's this constant need to be filling the space that's here with something. And that's a huge difference from old me to me today, is that I can chill like a motherfucker. Okay. And I'm sorry to swear. It's just,
that's okay.
I can lay in the sun listening to music or silence, and I can let my mind just come down. I can do that by myself. I can do that in the presence of others. Okay. And I don't need, like, I mean, I will talk, I'll converse, I'll do whatever. And you know me, I can talk forever. But when I hit a point where there's nothing else for me to say, if I don't feel like I need to be talking, I'm okay with the silence. I'm okay with that moment. But I don't think a lot of people are, you know? And I think when you're saying two people going out on a date, that people aren't comfortable with themselves, that they just need to be doing something to kind of fill their time, you know? And because they just don't know how it is to sit there and look at someone in the eyes and smile and just be present.
That's right.
And I think it's that the technology of today is not helping that. You know, it's only further escalating that need to be getting notifications and to be doing something, you know?
Do you also think that this kind of this has something to do with the FOMO mentality, you know, the fear of missing out, as people, and that's why everyone's in a rush to do everything all the time, and they're trying to do so many things at once, is because of that fear of missing out. They think they're missing out on something, where in reality, they're doing a disservice to themselves with trying to do 1,000 things at once.
So there's another thing too, right? We try to, you know, you and I are both engineers, right? And when we were in school, most of the problems that we were always trying to solve was, how can we make this the most efficient? How can we maximize profits? How can we, you know, it was never just do an okay job and then go sit down at the bench and have a sandwich. It was not that. It was all about, how can I get the most of everything, to have the most perfect life, the perfect day, the perfect this, the perfect that. And I think a lot of people today are a slave to that. It's this whole thing of, I need to squeeze the most out of everything. And that's tied with the FOMO, is because, you know, you don't want to miss anything. You want to make sure that you know as much as possible. You're connected and you're up to date. But I think that's a failure from today. And I think that's a thief of joy, a thief of our everyday peace and harmony that we have. Because if you are consistently trying to get the best out of every single moment, your CPU is firing all the time. And when that's firing, you're not enjoying the moment. And if you're not enjoying the moment, you're not happy. And so there's a trade. You got to say, you know, am I going to be multitasking? Am I going to be the most efficient? Am I going to be winning at life, but being an absolute robot and being miserable? Or am I okay not selling the stock at the top? I'm just happy just to sell it somewhere on that line. But I'm going to be peaceful. I'm going to be able to say, I sold that stock, and now I'm outside and I'm relaxing in the sun and I'm taking it easy and I'm present with my kids and I'm loving life. And I think if you ask people, they'll say they want that, but their actions are the first.
That's right.
The actions are, I know I should do that, but I still want to just make sure that I know everything, and I'm going to multitask, and I'm going to be doing these different things. You have to pick one, and you can't have both.
Absolutely. And, you know, Tony Robbins says something really good. If you want to change your outcome, you have to change your action. Like, you can't do the same thing and expect a different outcome. So, you know, that's fantastic. Listen, there's so many things that I want to dive into. I've been kind of, you know, writing things as we talk. One of the things we talked about as well was the modern day slavery.
Yeah.
You know, back in the days, we spoke about having chains around your neck, and in this day and age, it's that salary or paycheck that's really around your neck. Can you just talk a little bit about that and your thoughts on what that is on the modern world, modern day slavery?
Yeah. So, you know, this was a topic that, we had covered over last week. And, I started by telling you that, I think it was about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I was in the Gulf. I was on a deployment, and I was in Dubai. And every night we would drive from we would go into Dubai, and then at nighttime we would drive back. And of course, Dubai is this beautiful city, and it's ever so expanding, and the largest buildings and largest attractions at the highways, and everything is wonderful. But then there was this other thing that had caught my eye, was the fact is that, there was a lot of immigrants. There was a lot of, people not from Dubai that were there, that were the workers, and they were being bussed in, through 3 different shifts throughout the day. And there was, that city was growing, because they had all these modern day people that were kind of just making that city grow. But it was modern day slavery because they were getting paid peanuts, right? And I used to always think, oh, slavery, that's something from like 100 years ago, from 200 years ago. Like that doesn't exist today, until I saw that. So that was kind of like the first thing that opened my eyes to say, well, wait a minute, that is happening today. But then that led to the next revelation was, wait a minute, not only is that happening in Dubai, but I think it's actually happening here in North America, because, there's a lot of people who, when they finish their education, they get their jobs, and then there's these invisible shackles, is what I had said to you. There's these invisible shackles that get put on you when you're negotiating. You negotiate your salary, you negotiate your vacation, and it's like, oh, you got 2 weeks, or you got 3 weeks, maybe at best you got 4 weeks. Wonderful, lucky you. But the thing is that once you max out your vacation time, that's it. Like, you're not getting any more. That's it. And you got your salary. And the hard part is that whoever it doesn't matter what job you have. If you're in a job that's making 60,000, you're competing to the social life of all the people that you work with. If you're making 120,000, you're competing with all the other people who make 120,000. And if you are a doctor and you're making 350,000 or 500,000, you're competing against all the other doctors. And so the thing is that it doesn't really matter how much money you're making, because a lot of people are always trying to keep up with their social class, is that everyone's striving to get ahead. Everyone's pushing to have the max, buy the most material things. And so a lot of people get themselves in trouble because they have already spent their paycheck. Yeah. And they only have so much time off. And no one is saying, wait a minute, I don't need as much stuff. I don't need this much money. In fact, I want to work less. I only want to work half the year. That's not an option. It's not an option because it's the modern day slavery. All the jobs that are laid out in front of you, it's come be here as an employee. That's it. And you're right. Here in Canada, you make a good amount of money, but half of it is taxed. But you're lucky. Right. But you're lucky because you get healthcare. Even if you don't have a doctor, you got free healthcare, right? And it's very frustrating because when you look at your salary and you're paying $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 to taxes, and you're like, oh, okay, well, what's left over? Well, now I have to try to support a family. And, you go back to the 80s where housing, you could buy a house for $30,000 or $100,000 or $150,000. Well, right now, in Toronto, it's in the millions. How do you support a family? Well, you have to work. You have to work. Your partner has to work. Everybody's working to just maintain the bare necessities.
That's right.
Not even keeping up anymore. Just to kind of keep it going. And not to dive into this other topic that I feel very strongly about, but just to highlight it, is the fact that I think that in itself is something that we've lost. Is that now we have two parents that have these strong identities, worker identities that, that we're all waking up, we're going to our job, we're all bringing home the bacon, and we're going to come home and we're all exhausted and we're just going to order some food and, we're just going to get by. But there's been the breakdown of the family. There used to be someone who was home And it was a vital, and I'm not to be this, I don't want to sound like a jerk to say, a woman's role is this. No. Fuck. A woman wants to be an engineer, wants to be a doctor, go be whatever you want to be. But the thing is that a family unit used to be a team. Somebody was doing something, the other person was doing this. But the family as a whole was able to survive and be happy. And what we're doing today is that you got all these people who are out working and they're coming home and they're all exhausted and the family unit is just crumbling and something's not working. And I think that's a huge issue. And I don't think anybody's talking about it. I don't think anybody gives a shit about the fact that families are falling apart. But it meant something when your child was sick, that there was someone home to take care of the child. There was someone there to be available to talk and teach the child. There was a happiness that was shared inside the home, But now you have the male, or I probably shouldn't even do it. Just you have two parents who are going out that are coming home exhausted, and everybody is just trying to cook some food, do the laundry, do the cleaning of the house, keep everything all together. And I think you have a lot of miserable families,
Yeah.
And then, you know what? I hope I'm wrong. I hope you have 1,000 people that come and say, Rob, you're fucking wrong. And here's the example. Prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I feel that is what it is. And I feel that that's something that needs to be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to add something to that, before we end this, is I personally believe that they're not only, society is creating this competition between, the man and the woman to say, okay, you're being treated so bad, now go and prove yourself and do this. And, that's why you get a lot of women that are so deep into proving that and, chasing their careers, that family becomes secondary. And
Right.
that, again, doesn't just mean women. That the same thing applies to a man where, you're trying to prove yourself to everyone else, climbing this corporate ladder, chasing all this, the shiny objects, where you're neglecting, like I said before, you're not only neglecting your kids, you're also neglecting your spouse, and vice versa. And I don't know when this will ever end or how things are going to get better, but I think you need to focus on what's really important in life, and it's not the shiny object.
Well, one thing I really want to highlight though, it's when you're going to have that priority and you're going to say family, well, what is that in competition with? Family. Well, it's in competition with your ego, your identity, your spouse's ego and identity, right? And it's okay, you're going to have that. But at what point do you say priority number one is my identity versus my spouse's identity, and family is going to be number 3 or number 5?
Right.
And the thing is that most people don't even have that conversation because they're not even aware that, just like when I was in my therapist's office and she asked me that question about my family, what's my priority? It wasn't because I was a malicious person and then I didn't give a shit. It was the fact that I wasn't even aware of the fact that
That's right.
family was dropped off. And I think there's a lot of, like as I mentioned to you, I talk with a lot of friends about, I provide support and advice to people either going through a divorce or trying to avoid a divorce, or, grown men who are having a hard time in their life right now, just based on things. And one of the common things that pops up is the fact is that there's a wrestling between the priority of what's more important, keeping this family together, or my spouse or me, one of us giving up our identity to try to keep the family together. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people today that are happy to let the family crumble because they do not want to let go of their identity and their habits.
That's right.
And everyone becomes very defensive. You know what happens when people become defensive? Is nothing happens. There's no progress.
Yes.
Everybody shuts down because they're just like, fuck you, I'm protecting my ego. But the thing is that if you truly want to make things better, you have to make family number one.
Absolutely.
And you have to work together. And sometimes it's just being able to say, I surrender. I surrender my identity. I surrender my belief. I surrender being right. You can surrender being right as much as you can surrender being wrong. It's just saying that at the end of the day, I don't want my family to fall apart. I don't care to be the most successful person in this corporation. I just want to come home at night and feel loved. I want to be respected. I want to be happy, And the thing is that when you talk to people and they say, what do you wish for? Well, I wish for success. Well, what does success look like? Well, I want to be rich. I want to have all these different things. Well, that's great. So now you've got all these things, but nobody can really say how they're going to feel when they have it. And the reality is that there is no greater feeling that I get when my kids come home and they hug me. When my daughter comes and says, I love you. Or when I tell my son, my youngest son, I tell him I love him. And he's like, yeah, I know, Dad. You already told me 3 times today and you tell me every single day. That is happiness.
Right.
It's not this fictional thing of my net present value is this number over here. And here's all the lavish things that I have, because it's empty.
Yeah.
And it'll always be empty.
Absolutely. No, those are great points, Robin. Like I said, there's so much for us to discuss, but I'm going to end this part of the podcast right now, and we will pick this up again, and we're gonna have a series of these because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about, and it's not all gonna fit within this 1 hour, so we're gonna pick this up in the next podcast. So stay tuned. I will divulge that information to the audience, and I wanted to again thank you, Rob, for giving me your time today and sharing your insightful information and just being very raw about everything. I promise my audience that these podcasts with you, these series of podcasts are just going to be raw. And I think, again, as you and I talked about, these are the sort of things that are going to resonate with people more than picking theoretical stuff to talk about or just trying to sugarcoat shit, which I don't like doing myself personally. I like to be very transparent, and I think if you're going to help somebody, you got to kind of share that real experience with them. So I greatly appreciate, again, your time today and doing this with me.
Anytime, and I look forward to our next.
Awesome. So stay tuned, everybody. I will let you know about when the next podcast will be coming out. And if you've got any questions or comments for Rob, use the link below and put in your comments and anything that you want to ask him. I think he'll be able to answer you. And again, he's got a lot more to talk about in the upcoming podcast. So thanks, everyone, and see you in the next episode.